Hi, and welcome to my additional videos to help you in your calligraphy journey. This video is part of my Copperplate Variations series where I'm developing and defining a little bit of like more complex concepts than the foundational knowledge. If you are a total beginner, I recommend you to stop the video now and go to my playlist and choose the set of 7 tutorials called Intro to Copperplate Calligraphy. So on this video today, we are going to talk about the concept or the principle of a slant or a slope. And I'm going to be talking about different types of, different ways to measure the slant of slope of the writing, depending on if we are talking about calligraphy or a script font. And then we are going to be altering the slant just to play with that and see the different outcomes. So let's go. If you need blank calligraphy guidelines like this one, you can head to my link on Instagram. And in there, it will take you to subscribe to my Substack. And once you do that, you'll receive an automatic email with a hyperlink to download a set of calligraphy, blank calligraphy guidelines like this one. You will have different sizes and different hand styles as well. So let's go. I'm going to be using, I'm currently using Canson XL paper. It's bleed proof, it's 70 GSM, and it's very good for my practice. And my tools are, let me get the setup ready. My tools currently are an oblique pen holder and hand 101. Again, if you're a total beginner, I recommend you starting with Nico G or Zebra G instead of hand 101, but up to you. This is just a recommendation, not a rule. And my ink is walnut ink that I make myself using walnut crystals and water. Okay, let's go and talk about the principle of a slant or a slope. So the slant or a slope basically is the angle of the writing. The interesting thing here is that you can see on my guidelines, there are all these diagonal dashed lines. This is the slant or slope for this particular writing. At the moment, this is 55 degrees. So let's talk about this a little bit in depth. So if I consider the horizontal axis and the vertical axis, let's use 2 colors for that. So the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, you might think now that we are going back to school 20 years ago when we were having a look at these things. So the current angle of the writing that I'm using, let me use an additional 3rd color. It's this one. Okay, so in Copperplate Calligraphy, and I don't know the reason why, so if you know, please let me know in the comments. The angle that we are using is an angle of 55 degrees, but pay attention to this because these 55 degrees are measured against the horizontal axis. On the contrary, if we are talking about italic or script typefaces, in general terms, most of the times we are talking about the slant or slope of a font by the vertical axis. So this is like the same thing looked through 2 different angles. So it's the same truth through 2 different glasses. So in here, then if we are talking about italic or script fonts, we will be talking about a 35-degree angle. Okay, so this will be like a really fast script font. Both of these obviously are measured against different axes, but the angle of the writing will be the same. So what is the angle of the writing? In general terms, when we are writing really slow, and I'll do an example in here, and let me use this pen. When I'm writing really slow, for example, the word uni, I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm being very slow and precise. I'm going down, I'm going up again, and I'm using the foundation knowledge of Copperplate Calligraphy to do this. Up, down. When I do a very, very controlled and slow movement, what it comes naturally from my right-hand side, because with the left, it's a different story, but with my right-hand side, what it comes is a naturally upright movement. That means if this was a car, I will do the analogy that this car currently it's going at, so remember I am measuring now things by the vertical, 0 kilometers per hour. Okay, now if I have to write the word Barcelona and I tell myself to write this word as fast as I possibly can, that's what I obtain. And you can see that the movement is very, very fast. And by using a very fast speed at writing, I obtain a really strong angle of the writing. So in here, if we were going to measure this angle against the vertical, we will be saying that we are going at 35 kilometers per hour. If we measure that by the horizontal, then as Copperplate Calligraphy indicates, it's like a 55 kilometers per hour. Okay, so basically the angle of the writing relates to the slow or fast movement while creating the letter forms. What happens with Copperplate is quite unique because when you see someone that is very fluent at writing Copperplate, it feels like there is a very good flow and speed. But what we are learning, we actually have a really, really precise and controlled movement until we don't get familiarized with the tool and the shapes, and then the flow starts to kick in. So this is just an introduction about what it means, the slant or slope of the writing. Now, let's do a couple of exercises. So I'm going in here to the next line. Okay, so let's write something short so we can do a few variations. So for example, the word hunt. So if I'm using the slant or slope that I know very well, that means obviously that I'm gonna start to follow the slant of the writing, 55 degrees, and I'm gonna create the letter forms. And that's the look and feel of this type of angle. Now, if I want to obtain a different look and feel, but based on everything we have learned so far, which is the counter space, the space between letter forms, the amount of contrast, the consistency between each pair of letters, to pay attention on the type of connections that we are creating and so forth. So based on all the principles we have learned, I'm just going to modify now the angle of the writing. So in here, for example, I decided I'll change colors so it doesn't get messy here. I'm gonna go 100% upright. And now the type of connections, the width, and the letter spacing is still consistent, but what I'm changing in here is now the angle of the writing. So in my opinion, this looks a lot more static and this looks a lot more dynamic. And the reason why is because it's related to the concepts I have just explained in the speed at creating the letter forms at writing. So we can also create a variation where we can do a back slant. So let's say that we are going to be using a perpendicular slant, so things are going to go backwards. And you might think that I'm being very creative right now, but I can assure you that you can find examples of this type of writing 100 years ago. So it's not that I just discovered something incredibly new in here. So this is really difficult because now we have to go backwards and we are not used to doing this way, but it is a very good practice just to examine what type of slant we are doing in here and what happens if we use it with a metallic pointed pen. Okay, so again, I see that in here there is a lot more movement than in this case where things are a little bit more static. Okay, excellent. This is a point on the left. So I'm a right-hander, so all my writing comes from the my right-hand side, but if you come from the left, and I'm gonna show you now an example of this tool. If you come from the left, you might have seen some left-hander calligraphers that are using a straight pen holder with a straight nib. Why is this? The reason of this is that when we change the angle of our pen towards the paper coming from the left, you see that the position of the pen now, it's acquiring naturally the angle of the writing. So I do not need to have an elbow pen holder like in my case, because I don't need this extra help for the angle. Currently, my elbow is in contact with my ribs, and by using this position, I'm already obtaining the angle of the writing. Now, this is one option. Option number two is that some left-hander calligraphers are happy and very comfortable to use this type of tool that I normally use for the right-hand side. So I'm gonna come here this time. And then from this angle, the big difference is that I'm gonna rotate the page 90 degrees. And by doing that, I'm opening my arm, so my elbow is no longer in contact with my ribs, and you can see how the angle of the writing now is the same as the 55-degree copperplate angle. If you want to learn more about positioning paper, coming from the right, coming from the left, you'll find a couple of videos that focused especially on that, which are called right-hander setup as well as left-hander setup. Okay, let's do this now with the nib. And let's explore different types of look and feels changing the angle. So I'm gonna go a little bit closer now. Let me refocus. Yeah, and I'm gonna be marking the X height in here. And we are gonna do the same I just did with the blue pointed pen, the blue fine liner, now with the pointed pen. Okay, so I'm going up. First of all, first thing that is important to always keep in mind is your positioning on the table needs to be very comfortable enough so that your nib is always parallel to the slant of the writing. So always position the nib in the angle of your letter forms. And then down, up. Now, if I'm gonna work upright, like in the case that I'm showing you now, the paper positioning, which is currently this one, like you're seeing everything really parallel to your camera just because I rotate the camera when writing. I rotate the camera while writing because I'm a right-hander and I need this extra help to feel more comfortable while writing. Now, if I am no longer following this strong angle of the writing and I'm going upright, I can actually turn my paper, and now the paper is completely parallel to the table. And now the nib is gonna be sitting in this position. So it's no longer following the slant, but it's going up this way. So I'm gonna go in, and in here, I'm gonna recreate the same. Obviously, I have to ignore the lines I have underneath. I just need to look at the X height and the space for each unit. Going up. Okay. Now, if I have to go backwards, I haven't tried it yet, but could be an option that you want to turn the paper in the exact opposite direction. Like I have never tried it this way, but I'm gonna reposition again to where I was initially. So now I'll rotate the camera so you see everything straight and you don't need to break your neck. So, okay, now this is gonna be a very interesting position. So you see the angle is completely, is going the opposite direction. It's basically perpendicular to our 55 degrees. So if the angle is this one, I'm gonna position the nib exactly in the angle of the writing. If it helps, you can use pencil and just very thin apply these marks in here to help you create parallel down strokes. So I just did a very light touch. And then now, again, I position the pen following the angle of the writing that I'm going to be doing because my paper is rotated. So what happens is my arm is extremely open at the moment. I can see if position the paper parallel to the table is easier, but I'm going to try it this way and see how it's going. So going up again, and down. It's a very fun exercise just to have a look what's going on. Okay, so in this case, I would say it's very windy and we are walking and there is a lot of friction coming this way. And I see there is a lot of speed coming out of these letter forms. All right, so these are three very simple examples to talk about what a slant or slope of the writing means, why sometimes the angle is measured by the vertical axis and sometimes by the horizontal axis when we are actually talking about the same angle, just different ways of measure it and how we can create variations of it. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching. And if you want more information on materials, read the description on this video. Thank you very much.